In the grand pages of Islamic history, some names shine so brightly that their stories echo through every generation, names like Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali, ibn Abbas, but hidden behind those great luminaries are figures whose light was just as pure, whose service to Islam was just as noble, and whose generosity was so deep yet today they are barely remembered. One such man was Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, a man who grew up in the shadow of his famous brother, the great scholar Abdullah ibn Abbas, the ocean of knowledge. A man whose name rarely appears in Friday sermons or in history lectures, but whose heart, generosity, and loyalty to his family and to this Ummah are a shining example for every Muslim today. This is not just the story of a merchant or a wealthy donor. This is the story of someone who understood his role in life, a role that wasn't about competing for fame, but about complementing the people Allah placed around him. His life teaches us that you don't have to be the most famous, the most eloquent, or the most learned to be among the beloved of Allah. Sometimes you just have to serve, give, and love sincerely. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas was born into a family already intertwined with the Prophet Muhammad. His older brother, Abdullah ibn Abbas, was born during the hardest years of the Prophet's mission. During the boycott in Mecca, food was scarce, hardship was everywhere, yet the Prophet Muhammad himself blessed Abdullah at birth with the technique, placing his blessed saliva on the child's tongue when dates could not be found. Ubaydullah was born just a year later, also during the Prophet's lifetime, and grew up as part of the inner family circle of the Messenger of Allah, Prophet Muhammad. He was not just another cousin, he was one of the children the Prophet loved and played with. Imagine, for a moment, being a child in the house of the Prophet Muhammad. There's a narration that paints this picture beautifully. The Prophet Muhammad would sometimes gather the children, Abdullah, Ubaydullah, and their brother Kuthair, and stand them in a row. He would take a few steps back and call out, "Whoever reaches me first, I will give him something." The boys would laugh, their eyes lighting up, and sprint toward him as fast as their little legs could carry them. And when they reached him, they would jump onto his chest or back, and the Prophet Muhammad would embrace them, kiss them, and laugh with them. These moments were not just play. They were the seeds of love, confidence, and belonging that the Prophet Muhammad planted in the hearts of his young relatives. And Ubaydullah grew up with that warmth, something that would shape the generosity and kindness he became famous for. Ubaydullah's father, Hazrat Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, was one of the wealthiest men in Mecca, known for his sharp business sense. He traded in high-quality goods, sweet scents, fine spices, aromatic woods. Pilgrims to the Kaaba would come to his shop for the best merchandise, and his reputation for quality was unmatched. When the Prophet Muhammad delivered his farewell sermon, one of the historic declarations he made was to abolish all riba. He specifically mentioned that any interest owed to his uncle Al-Abbas would be forgiven, a public testimony that Al-Abbas had been deeply involved in large-scale business dealings. Ubaydullah grew up learning the family trade, where his older brother Abdullah devoted himself to the pursuit of knowledge, tafsir, and teaching. Ubaydullah learned the art of commerce, negotiation, quality control, customer relations, and wealth management. He inherited not only his father's business skills but also his noble manners, generosity, and dignity. People described him as having the appearance of nobility. You could tell by looking at him that he came from a household of honor. Stories of Ubaydullah's generosity fill the pages of history. One of the most remarkable happened during a journey through the desert. He and his companions lost their way and ran out of food and water. They came across a Bedouin who owned nothing but a single pregnant goat, his only source of livelihood. The Bedouin, not even knowing who his guests were, slaughtered the goat and fed them. They protested, telling him he didn't have to give up his only animal, but the Bedouin insisted hospitality was sacred. When Ubaydullah returned home, he sent the Bedouin 500 gold dinars in gratitude. To put this in perspective, this was a staggering sum, far beyond the value of the goat. One of his servants remarked, "You could have given him 5 dinars and it would have been generous. Why 500? Ubaydullah's reply is a masterclass. In perspective, that man is more generous than us. He gave us all of his dunya. We only gave him some of ours. This reflects the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that a small amount given by someone who owns little can outweigh vast sums given by the wealthy. Because Allah judges generosity not by numbers but by sacrifice. Ubaydullah's love for his brother Abdullah was not just personal, it was strategic for the Ummah. Abdullah ibn Abbas was one of the greatest scholars of his time. His home in Medina, a university of Quran and Hadith. Students would line up outside his door in the early morning just to attend his lessons. Ubaydullah could have been envious. He could have tried to compete for attention or scholarly fame. Instead, he embraced his own role. He decided that if Abdullah's mission was to feed hearts with knowledge, then his mission would be to feed those hearts with bread and meat. He would regularly send trays of food, fresh bread and tender meat, to his brother's home, ensuring that every student who came to learn would also be nourished. People even made a rhyme about it. If you want knowledge, go to Abdullah. If you want food, go to Ubaydullah. This was the embodiment of another hadith. During the Prophet's time, there were two brothers, one who spent all his time with the Prophet Muhammad learning and another who worked to support him financially. When the working brother complained, the Prophet Muhammad told him, "Perhaps you are given provision only because of him." Ubaydullah lived this truth, understanding that Allah might bless his wealth because he spent it in support of someone. Spreading knowledge. Ubaydullah was not only a merchant and donor, he also served the Muslim community in leadership roles. In the year 36 he was appointed governor of Yemen by Caliph Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib. He later served as the emir of Hajj, a position of immense honor. Organizing and leading the pilgrims in the sacred journey. Leadership did not change his humility. Even with titles and authority, he remained committed to generosity, hospitality, and service to others. Ubaydullah's story ends in Medina, where he lived to an old age, possibly as old as 87, and was buried in the blessed city. While his name might not be as famous as other companions, his life leaves us with powerful lessons. Find your role and excel in it. You don't have to do everything. Support others in their work, for Allah measures generosity by sacrifice, not amount. The most generous is often the one who gives the most relative to what they have. Honor family without rivalry. Love for a sibling's success should inspire you, not threaten. You lead with humility. Positions of authority are opportunities for service, not self-promotion. Me, dear brothers and sisters, we live in a time where recognition is craved more than reward. From Allah. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas reminds us that the truest servants may not be remembered by millions, but they are remembered by the Lord of the world. So, what will your role be? Will you compete for the spotlight, or will you support the light bearers in whatever way Allah has blessed you? Whether with wealth, time, skill, or even a kind word, your role matters. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let the forgotten legacies of our history inspire a revival of sincerity and generosity in our own time. And stay connected to Islamic Echoes for more true stories from our past that speak to our hearts today. Because when we remember them, we remember who we are meant to be.